Many people were shocked when Dallin H, the current president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, spoke about Russell M. Nelson in a way no one expected. His words felt different. Some people said it was a simple tribute. Others felt there was something deeper, almost like a hidden message. Today, we are going to talk about that moment. But before we reveal what Oakes actually said, we must understand who Russell M. Nelson was and why millions respected him so much. Russell M. Nelson is no longer with us, yet his name is still alive in the hearts of believers around the world. Many saw him as a leader, a teacher, and a man who brought spiritual change in countless lives. When he passed away, people felt it like the end of an era. Then Dallin H. Oakes came forward and spoke about Nelson, calmly, but with powerful emotion. His words made people stop and think. Was he only praising Nelson, or was he trying to send a message? In this video, we will reveal his exact words and the reason they shook so many minds. Stay with me, because what you are about to hear may change how you see Russell M. Nelson's legacy. Now, let's begin. Russell Marion Nelson was a name that became known far beyond the walls of a church. Long before he became a worldwide spiritual figure, he was simply a young boy born on the 9th of September, 1924, in Salt Lake City, Utah. His childhood was ordinary, simple, and full of learning moments. He grew up like many of us, curious, active, and shaped by his surroundings. Nobody knew that this boy would one day hold a major leadership role, guiding people and becoming an influential public figure. As he grew older, Nelson developed a deep interest in education. He was a focused student, and learning became a central part of his early life. He later chose to study medicine, a path that would define many years of his future. With time, he became a skilled heart surgeon. Before he became known for his leadership, he was known in the medical field for research, surgeries, and academic work. He spent long hours in hospitals, working with teams, treating patients, and helping develop procedures that contributed to heart surgery progress. His medical journey showed discipline and commitment. Nelson was not only a doctor, he also taught others, worked on scientific studies, and continued improving his skills. This phase of his life reflects how strongly he believed in hard work and progress. Many colleagues respected him for his knowledge and calm nature. His contributions to medicine gained recognition and helped establish his name in the professional world. Years later, he accepted responsibilities within the church. In 1984, he was invited to serve as an apostle, marking a new chapter in his life. His focus gradually shifted from medical practice to leadership and public teaching. He traveled, gave speeches, and participated in various programs related to church development. People who saw him during this time often described him as disciplined, steady, and thoughtful. Over the years, his involvement and responsibilities continued to increase. Eventually, he became the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, a position that placed him at the center of organizational decisions, reforms, and future direction. This was not a sudden rise. It came after decades of service, learning, and leadership experience. Understanding where he came from helps us understand why he earned respect from many people across the world. He was not only a leader later in life, but first a student, a medical professional, a researcher, and then a public figure. His journey shows a gradual rise built on work, knowledge, and long-term dedication. Now that we have seen how his story began, we can move forward to the next part: what major contributions he made during his leadership, and how his decisions shaped the community he served. As Russell M. Nelson continued his spiritual journey, his influence inside the church began to shine more and more. When he became a leader, people noticed a man who was calm, thoughtful, and always trying to move the church forward. His decisions were not just rules, they were steps that he believed would bring the church closer to its purpose. Many members felt that under his leadership, the church entered a new chapter. One of his most noticeable contributions was his focus on the temples. Nelson spoke about temples with deep emotion. He believed they were places of peace and spiritual connection. During his time, the number of temples around the world increased at a remarkable pace. New temples were announced in countries where people never imagined they would see one. This expansion gave church members a feeling of being seen and valued. For many, it felt like hope reaching their doorstep. Temples became symbols of growth, unity, and progress, and Nelson's name became tied to this movement. Another important part of his work was missionary efforts. Nelson encouraged young men and women to serve missions and share their faith with others. He often spoke about kindness, service, and representing the church with love. Under his leadership, missionary work was highlighted as more than just preaching. It was about helping people, listening to them, and offering comfort. Missions became a way for youth to build character, develop discipline, and grow spiritually. Many members still remember his teachings that said, "Serve with your heart, not just with your words." Nelson also focused on modernizing the church. He believed that the world was changing, and the church must keep up while staying strong in faith. During his leadership, technology started being used more than ever for religious learning and connection. Mobile apps, online scriptures, digital resources, things that once seemed distant quickly became normal for church members. This move helped young people feel more engaged and helped families stay spiritually connected even when they were far apart. Nelson understood that faith should not be limited by distance. Another thing that stood out was his way of speaking. Nelson was gentle, but when he talked about faith, his words carried weight. He didn't try to force his message. He simply shared it with sincerity. Many times, his speeches touched hearts because he spoke like a person who had lived what he was talking about. He often encouraged people to be patient, to forgive, to believe in God's timing, and to stay strong in difficult days. Members around the world found comfort in his voice. During his time, the church saw efforts toward unity and peace. Nelson spoke about treating others with respect, no matter their background. He believed in building bridges rather than walls. Many people appreciated how he emphasized love in families and communities. He reminded people to look after one another, to lift each other up, and to not lose hope even when the world felt heavy. He also made important structural decisions for the church. Meetings, programs, and church routines were simplified to help families focus more on home-centered spiritual growth. The idea was not to make religion complicated, but to bring it closer to daily life. Many families felt that their homes became warmer, more connected, and more spiritually active because of this approach. Every contribution he made had one thing in common. It was centered around faith, service, and making life better for others. Whether he was opening temples, guiding missionaries, encouraging families, or bringing technology into the church, his goal was clear. He wanted a church that grows, a church that reaches hearts, and a church that stands strong in modern times. This is why, when people talk about Russell M. Nelson, they don't just talk about his position. They talk about his work, his dedication, and the path he set for the future. His leadership was like a hand gently pushing the church forward, step by step, with purpose and love. And now, as we move ahead in our story, we begin to understand something important. The tribute from Dallin H would not have felt powerful if Nelson's contributions were small. But they weren't. They were significant. They shaped lives. They shaped faith. And they built a legacy that people still feel today. Now that we know what Nelson gave to the church, the next part becomes even more meaningful. How the world responded to him, and why his influence continued even after he was gone. As Russell M. Nelson continued to lead, his presence reached far beyond local communities. His influence spread across continents, languages, and cultures. People who had never met him personally still felt connected through his teachings and messages. It was not just about leadership, it was about how he made people feel. Many followers believed that his words brought peace during confusion and hope during struggle. When he spoke, it felt as if he was talking directly to individuals, not crowds. That personal connection became one of the strongest reasons his name traveled so far. In different parts of the world, members often shared stories about how Nelson's guidance helped them make decisions in life. Some found strength to face illness, some found courage to forgive, and others found a reason to rebuild their faith. His voice became something people waited for, especially during difficult times. Conferences where he spoke were moments of attention and emotion. Even those who disagreed with church views at times still admitted that Nelson carried a calm, steady presence that commanded respect. What made him stand out was the way he encouraged people to improve themselves, even in small steps. He talked about listening more, being kinder, praying sincerely, and holding on to hope even when everything felt uncertain. These were simple ideas, yet they carried depth. Many followers wrote about how his message changed the atmosphere inside their homes. Families tried to speak more lovingly, youth found motivation to stay focused, and older members felt valued and remembered. His influence was not loud. It was gentle, but strong enough to move hearts. Around the world, communities would gather just to hear his addresses. People would sit in halls, homes, and sometimes even outdoors, with screens set up, waiting for his message. Social media posts, gatherings, group discussions, all of it showed how he brought people together. There was unity in listening, and unity in learning. Nelson often reminded listeners that faith isn't only about words, but about how we live. His simple reminders became daily habits for many. Followers admired how he encouraged them to seek personal spiritual growth, rather than depend only on public gatherings. He spoke about inner change, private devotion, and building a relationship with God that lives beyond a building or meeting. This idea touched many hearts, especially those who felt distant or unsure. It made faith feel reachable, something that even someone sitting quietly at home could experience. Another part of his global influence came from his optimism. Even when the world was going through tension, conflict, or uncertainty, he maintained a hopeful tone. He reminded people that better days could come. This positivity became like light for many who felt lost. His messages were often shared, translated, and spread through communities who needed encouragement. It was as if he offered strength not by pressure, but by lifting spirits. People also respected how he valued peace. He spoke against anger, division, and needless conflict. In a time where disagreements often turn into hate, Nelson encouraged listeners to approach each other with understanding. This message of peace became one of the qualities people remembered most about him. To some, he felt like a grandfatherly figure, warm, caring, thoughtful. To others, he felt like a guide who walked ahead but kept looking back to make sure everyone was still with him. His global influence can be seen in how members still remember his tone, his teachings, and his presence. Even now, when people speak about him, their expressions carry softness and respect. His impact did not end with his leadership. It continued in the lives of people he inspired. And this growing influence is the reason why, when he passed away, the reaction around the world was deep and emotional. It was not just news. It was a moment many people felt in their hearts. Now we move to the next chapter of our story. What happened when Russell M. Nelson passed away, and how the world responded to his departure. When Russell M. Nelson passed away, it felt like a quiet wave of sadness moved across the church community. News spread quickly, and with it came messages of love, memories, and gratitude from people everywhere. Many who had followed his guidance for years felt a kind of emptiness, not because hope was gone, but because a guiding voice had gone silent. It was a moment that reminded everyone how deeply he had touched lives. Across different countries, gatherings were held where people prayed for peace and comfort. Some shared stories of how Nelson strengthened their faith, while others simply sat in silence, remembering his calm presence. Online spaces filled with messages from members saying how his words helped them during their toughest days. Even those who had never met him felt a personal loss, as if someone familiar had left. Church leaders, families, youth, and elderly members all expressed respect for his service. Many spoke about how he always carried himself with kindness, There were no grand displays or loud reactions, just sincere emotion. People shared photos of him smiling, speaking, and guiding others, and these images became reminders of his gentle nature. His passing became a time for reflection. Followers looked back at their own lives and how his teachings shaped the choices they made. Something unique happened during this time. Instead of fear or confusion, many found strength in the very lessons Nelson had taught. People said things like, "He would want us to stay united," or "He taught us to trust God's plan." In a way, his passing continued his message. Even in loss, he encouraged faith. Many families read his quotes together, and his voice continued to guide them through memories. The after effect was not only emotional, it was motivational. Some members committed to living more kindly, praying more often, and staying close to spiritual values. It was as if Nelson's departure reminded them to hold tightly to what really matters. His absence pushed people to remember his legacy, not just in words, but in practice. Around this time, followers naturally looked toward church leadership for comfort and direction. Everyone wondered what would be said next. What words would help people heal? What message would honor a man who spent his life serving others? People waited to hear how he would speak about Nelson, a man he knew well, worked beside, and respected deeply. And then, Oakes stepped forward. His voice was steady, thoughtful, and filled with emotion that could be felt even through simple words. What he said next shaped conversations, stirred hearts, and left people thinking for days. This brings us to perhaps the most awaited moment of this story, the statement of Dallin H. Oakes about Russell M. Nelson. Some called it respectful, others called it powerful, and a few believed there was a deeper meaning hidden within his words. Now, let's move into the part many have been waiting to hear. After Nelson's passing, people waited for someone to speak, not just formally, but personally. They wanted to hear words that could describe his character, his leadership, and his spirit. Everyone knew that if someone could truly express it, it would be Dallin H. Oakes, the man who stood beside Nelson for years, witnessed his decisions closely, and worked with him through many important chapters of the church. When Oakes finally addressed the church, the atmosphere was quiet. People listened not only with their ears, but with their hearts. His expression showed respect, and his tone carried a softness that only comes when speaking about someone admired. Oakes didn't start with long stories or heavy words. Instead, he spoke in a way that made every listener feel like they were part of a shared memory. He described Nelson as a man of steady faith and purpose, but then Oakes said something that made people stop and think. He said that Nelson was a leader who never asked others to walk a path he wasn't willing to walk himself. Some listeners felt chills at that sentence. It wasn't a normal compliment. It was a reflection of leadership from inside, not outside. Oakes was not just praising, he was revealing character. As Oakes continued, he talked about Nelson's discipline and his calm approach toward challenges. He mentioned that Nelson faced responsibilities not with pride, but with humility. In Oakes's words, leadership was not about position, it was about example. And Nelson, according to him, lived what he taught. Oakes said that Nelson didn't just speak about faith, he lived it day by day. He didn't just guide others, he guided himself first. Another line from Oakes caught attention when he said, "He walked with faith even when the road was quiet and no one was watching." Many people later repeated this line online. It suggested that Nelson's sincerity was not only public, it was private and personal. Some viewers believed that Oakes was telling the world that Nelson's greatness was not only in what he achieved, but in who he was when no one was praising him. Then Oakes shared something that felt like a message, not only a tribute. He said, "His absence does not end his work, it invites us to continue it." This sentence hit deeply. It sounded like a call, a reminder, a responsibility. It made many think, was Oakes encouraging followers to carry forward Nelson's values? Was he gently passing the torch to those listening? Many people discussed this afterward. Some said it was simple respect. Others felt Oakes was sending a signal. that leadership in faith does not stop with one person. It continues through everyone who remembers the teachings. But the most emotional moment came when Oakes's voice softened, and he said, "I am grateful for every day I stood beside him." It was short, but powerful. In that one sentence, he expressed brotherhood, friendship, and admiration that years of work had built. Towards the end of his message, Oakes reminded everyone that Nelson's life was not just history, it was legacy. He said that legacy becomes alive only when people practice what they learned, not when they only talk about it. It felt like a gentle nudge to the community, urging them to hold on to the values Nelson stood for. People listening felt something more than sadness. They felt responsibility. Oakes didn't make Nelson a memory. He made him a lesson. A lesson to continue faith, to live kindly, and to lead with humility. Many viewers said later that after listening to Oakes, they didn't just remember Nelson, they wanted to become better because of Nelson. This moment, the way Oakes spoke, the lines he chose, and the emotion behind them, is the reason people still talk about that statement. Some believed Oakes was simply honoring a leader, others believed he was guiding the church into the next chapter, and a few wondered if there was a deeper message hidden between the lines, a message that leadership is not a title, but a responsibility carried by every believer. Even today, when people recall that speech, it does not fade. It is replayed, quoted, shared, and discussed because those words held meaning far greater than that moment. It was like Oakes placed a light in everyone's hands, a light Nelson once carried, and said, "Keep it burning." That is why this statement became memorable. It touched hearts, not just minds. It taught something without force. And in that silence after the speech ended, people felt both loss and strength, loss of a leader, and strength in the legacy he left behind. And now, as we reach the end of this journey, one thing becomes clear. Russell M. Nelson was not just a leader for a time, he became a voice that still lives within people. His work, his decisions, and his gentle way of guiding others left a mark that cannot be forgotten. Leadership ends when life ends, but legacy continues when people remember, follow, and grow. This is what we see today, a legacy that lives through those who carry his teachings forward. Dallin H. Oakes reminded the world of that legacy. His words were not long or complicated, yet they carried a message that reached deep. He honored Nelson not by describing achievements, but by pointing to the kind of man he truly was. A man who led with faith, walked with humility, and left behind a path for others to follow. Oakes's message was not only a tribute, it was an invitation to continue the good work, to live with purpose, and to hold the light high. As listeners, we must ask ourselves, what part of Nelson's example will we keep in our own lives? Will we choose patience when it's hard? Will we choose kindness when it's easier to stay silent? Will we hold faith even when no one is watching? These choices are small, but they are the same choices that shaped a great leader. If we carry even a piece of that forward, then his legacy does not end, it grows. So, as we close this video, take a moment to reflect. Think about what touched you the most. Was it his dedication, his gentle presence, or the message he left behind through Oakes's words? Share your thoughts below. Your voice matters, and your reflection might help another person listening today. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support means a lot. See you in the next video.